So, talking about gender roles um, and how they affect relationships, I don't think that's something that's really going to change anytime too soon.
Hmm.
But just to bring our listeners in to what we're talking about today is how gender roles affect relationships in general, not just dating, but maybe 5-year, 20-year relationships. And something I personally would like to touch on a little bit, and I don't know how you're feeling, Kanan, but like they're just not changing. They're not changing as fast as I think everyone wants them to. And there's a lot of misunderstandings around them. So I'm thinking maybe today we can clear up a few misunderstandings about like alpha male versus beta male and hopefully our listeners can get a little something out of it. But just as a little preface for our listeners today, Kaden and I decided we missed you guys and we kind of
Yes,
wanted to take the opportunity to just be us today. So, no
yes,
guest, just
yes.
us.
Just us. Although I hope you guys took some time to listen to our last episode, Ageless Love, um, with your mom, Denise LaRosa,
Yeah, I'm a little
Dr.
biased on
Denise.
that one.
Yeah, I am too, because I feel like I learned a lot in that episode about myself and about
Hmm.
love and about my place and why things happen the way that they happen. And as we age, we start to get curious about what's important. And it was so nice to have Dr. Denise LaRosa on our show talking about what to expect, um, things that I've thought in the past. She kind of confirmed or like cleared up some misconceptions I had about love. And I found that episode to be so refreshing because no matter how old you get or how young you are, I think we all, and you've mentioned it in other episodes, we all
Hmm.
crave human connection.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we think that just because we get older, and people tend to ignore older people, they're like, oh, they don't need love. They're just, they're young. And then older people sometimes have to like overcompensate their sexuality. I feel like sometimes to show that they're still sexual because people are just so quick to like put certain people in a box.
Hmm.
And it goes amongst different people. But yeah, gender roles is tricky because I feel like even in gay relationships, honestly, people are like, okay, so who's the man and who's the woman? Or
Oh,
who has a more, like you're saying, alpha energy
hmm.
versus the beta energy?
Right.
And I feel like people ask that about lesbian relationships, straight relationships, gay
Absolutely.
relationships. Like, what is that about?
There's a lot of false dichotomies out there, and this is probably one of the biggest ones
Mhm,
was about the alpha male. And people throw that around. The alpha male is this macho, gym bro, wannabe tough guy, but that's actually not the alpha male.
mhm,
I don't know how our media has allowed people to believe that that's what an alpha male is, but that's actually not. I think it's just an assumption.
mhm.
So, I guess to set the record straight, an alpha male is just a leader. Let me actually backtrack. The alpha person, because there are alpha women as
Yeah,
well,
yeah, for sure.
right? They're that woman in a friend group that everyone goes to.
Mhm,
So I hate keep saying like male. So the alpha
yeah,
person
yeah,
just is a good leader. They can be powerful, but they tend to be a little bit more calm,
mhm.
or at least you hope they are.
At least, yeah.
um, they have a good balance of strong and kind. You know, they're not necessarily your CEOs, so don't confuse that with
Mm,
leadership
mhm.
because someone is a supervisor or a CEO or president of a company doesn't make them a good leader,
Mhm.
right? Those
Yeah.
people tend to be more on the narcissistic side of things. But a good leader is someone who just has positive leadership skills. They can be assertive, they know how to communicate pretty well, usually. And they dominate their own path, whether it's career or relationships or life in general. They have a good idea of what they want and they go for it. They're ambitious, they have drive. So that's really the big difference. They're not these like gym bros, these GTL guys or women. It's just a huge fallacy that we've created.
It really is, and honestly, I've seen it on Reddit, I've seen it on Twitter. It's like there's this growing group of people, and most of them are, like, between the age of 17 and maybe 25 now, and they're redefining what it is to be a alpha male or alpha person in today's society by saying,
Mhm.
"Oh, an alpha male is a guy that drinks a gallon of water a day. He gets up at 5 a.m. He hits that gym. He lifts those weights. He eats that beef. He goes hiking. He knows how to fix a car." I'm like, this sounds like some 1970s like movie, you know? And they're trying to equate all of that with like the idea of manliness, you know?
Right.
Um, and it's kind of weird because a lot of times, like these guys that are deep, or what is it, gym tan laundry, or whatever it's
Uh-huh.
called.
The GTL, the Gym Tan
Exactly.
Laundry.
Yeah. Or whatever those kind of guys that kind of subscribe to the whole, I guess it's called red pill, where they say
Hmm.
that feminization is ruining our modern world, which is wild, a wild statement in of itself. I
Yes, it is.
appreciate male energy, but to think that an alpha male means like a I kind of feel like they've reduced it to like a simply animalistic, very, I guess, carnal,
Yes.
yeah, very just simplified reasoning, I guess you would say, behind
Hmm.
it. And I don't understand it because a lot of times those guys aren't leaders. Like if something
No.
happens, they're like honestly, the last president, he was all about masculinity, be a leader, be tough. He had that alpha energy. But as soon as something happened, I mean, I would hate to make the show political, but this is really about the energy of that kind of man.
I love
Um,
how you whispered it though. As if no one can hear you now.
I know the person in the car next to us can't hear what I just said, but it's like when something happens, they run.
Right.
That's not alpha male energy or alpha person energy.
Right. They're thinking alpha is a sense of intimidation. Do you
Mhm.
intimidate other people? And
Yes.
yeah, while alphas do tend to intimidate other people, it's not on purpose. That's again a whole other category. Um, but it's just, an alpha is the highest rank in a group.
Pretty
To
much.
really dumb it down as low as I can go. I mean, think about when you consider alpha animals, right? They're the
Mhm.
leader. We live in California and we're in cowland. You can see where there's an alpha cow sometimes. And remember, those are females. So alpha is not just males, it's females. They're the leader.
It's really not because I think was it elephants? Don't the female elephants pretty much run the whole uh,
Family.
yeah, or something
Yes.
like that. I was trying to make sure that I'm not wrong because for a hot second I was thinking about all the trips I went to the zoo. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think, or is it with lions, the females are the more dominant. I don't know. But I know in some of the animal species, there is a dominant male, and usually they're dominant because they produce a lot of sperm, they're strong. They like if you reduce it, like you just said, scientifically, I don't know if you said you didn't say scientific, but if you just reduce it, um, females like to mate with the men that seem to have the best physical and whatever makeup. I mean, so it's like in my mind, it's partly some of that. It's partly some of that just that pure um energy of just being strong and being like healthy or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I do
Right.
see that it's the leadership should be more of what people are thinking. Ugh, I feel like I got lost in my train of thought just now. Reel me back in, please,
You were
please.
kind of heading down towards like the whole beta
Yeah.
with the animal comparison. And just to clarify, when it comes to lions, it is the male that leads, but it's all of the females that do all of the hunting. So the male would not survive without the female.
That's it. Okay.
Um, but when you're looking at alpha versus beta people, humans, because we are animals in a way, right? We can be very animalistic in our own ways.
Hmm.
Um, People really have, for some reason, assumed that a beta male equates to loser. And it doesn't, not at
Yeah.
all.
No.
Just because a beta person is not necessarily a leader and wants to lead a group of people, it doesn't mean that they aren't successful.
Yeah.
And often, more often than not, beta personalities have more success with relationships and dating because they are willing to take the back seat and kind of just go with the flow, right? And that's kind of what everyone's always looking for in relationships. Like, let's just go with the flow and see what happens and
Hmm.
not be so tightly wound. And
Hmm.
an alpha in a relationship will dominate the relationship.
Yeah.
So when you have two alpha people in a relationship, and I've seen it. I have friends that are both alpha personalities, and they have been married for years, and they're a beautiful couple, but they know when to be alpha and when to be beta on certain topics and certain issues that come up and challenges. So it's not to say you can't have two alpha personalities in a relationship, but you have to know when to back off and when something is really important to you.
So, okay. So, like we were talking before, you had mentioned that the beta male is like, you were saying it's like a worker bee in a way, where it's like they know how to like be a team player.
Mhm.
So does that like, so in my mind, I feel like both have their advantages. But what I just thought was, it reminds me when you said two alphas, it's like two men that are in a relationship. And a lot of times they're like, can have that alpha energy. And I'm seeing with a lot of, not a lot, but some gay relationships with two men, they're competitive with each other. But I
Mm.
also see that with like straight couples too, where it's a guy and a girl, hello. And, they're like competitive when it comes to sports or physical stuff or even career
Careers are a
advancement.
big one.
Yeah. And I can see that, like, if some relationships, if the woman starts to do better than the guy automatically feels like less. Like yesterday, I saw something. We were at the Getty Museum and there was this couple in front of us. It was a young couple, straight couple. Female was that's kind of irrelevant, but they were interracial couple. Um, he went to pay and he put in his card. It didn't work. He did it again. It didn't work. And then she just pulled out her card, paid, and then they went on their way. And it just had me thinking, I know in his mind he might be beating himself up because society says as a male, you should be able to provide, you should have money, you know, you should be able to take your girl out on a date and not have your card get declined twice in front of a line of
Right.
waiting people trying to pay for their food. And I know he probably beat himself up a lot about that, and I feel like that's damaging in our society. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Curious, real quick though, on that situation. Did it seem like they talked about it at all? Did she like rub it in his face or say, like, no, don't worry, I got it? Or did she just do it?
She just did it. Like,
That's awesome.
yeah, like I mean, he seemed to like kind of I guess show shameful, become a little bit more shameful in his body language. Like he
Hmm.
started to his chest started to go in a little, his head went down, and she just paid. They didn't really say anything. She just paid and
Good.
they left. That's it.
So it's really hard on men when a woman reminds him of his financial status. It takes a toll on them. Men are raised, and we've talked about this before, the three P's, right? The profess, protect, and provide. And that is a huge piece to heterosexual relationships, that the man is the provider.
Mhm.
And it'll take a toll on his ego and his self esteem if he can't be the provider. And in this situation, the fact that she didn't say anything about it, she didn't need to talk about it, she just took her card out, paid because she knew probably people were behind her, and they went on their merry way. Now I'm hoping that she never brought it back up. again and just
Mhm,
let it go, because you're right. He was probably beating the shit out of himself internally for it. And he
mhm,
probably felt so, so embarrassed. And when people feel embarrassed, and this isn't just for men, when people feel embarrassed, there's no need to rub it in their face.
yeah.
Right. And you could see in his body language that he probably was feeling that. And so I'm really hoping that she just kind of went, you know what? It is what it is. It's not a big deal.
I mean, we sat close to them, and it looked like they just moved on with their day, like, I didn't see
Good.
a change, like, they still sat close to each other, like, I think,
Hmm.
or did they sit across from each other? I'm not sure. But, they didn't look like there was any tension between them. I just thought it's so interesting because it's kind of wild in a way that both men and women have this pressure, especially in heterosexual relationships, to fit a certain narrative, and if they
Right.
don't, we automatically feel shame. Like,
Hmm.
I know there's women out there that probably, clip their own wings from, like, going too high or being or becoming too successful out of fear that they'll be single forever. And there's also
Absolutely.
men that are like, "I only want a woman that is, like, pretty, quiet, and supports me no matter what." Like, there's something in the news recently, this might be a rumor, but I was reading an article or maybe a blip or something with Kim Kardashian and Kanye West getting a divorce. And last year when he was running for president, I thought it was very interesting that she was still very Biden Harris. Meanwhile, her husband's running for president. And then in a recent interview, she was saying how he needs a woman that supports him no matter what. And I'm like, that's interesting. So is he that kind of alpha male where he couldn't be with an alpha female, where she's successful, she has her own ideas? And then did he come to a point where he's like, no, I need someone that supports me no matter what?
Kind of sounds like it.
And it's just sad though, because it's like, I feel like so many of us subscribe to these narratives that keep us honestly single
Hmm. And there's a
or
lot of women out there that are like that too. They're the alpha females. They've worked very hard to have a very successful career.
mhm,
And now they struggle to find relationships, healthy relationships, where they can have a partnership with someone, because while they're still attracted to the alpha male, because they're leaders, they're go-getters, and that's what they are themselves. And so we often, Tony Robbins talks about how we are attracted to those who are either like us
mhm,
or the way we want to be. And that's
mhm,
so true. And yet, when those women are looking for men who are like them or higher, those men don't want to compete with those women for attention. And sometimes it's not just career, but it's looks. You see some of the most gorgeous women who are still single, and you're like, how are you single?
mhm,
Great personalities, very career driven, but it's intimidating for some men to be out with a woman, or vice versa, for some women to be out with a man who everyone is going to notice, who everyone's going to look at. And it just gets to be too much pressure for some people, and they just can't do it.
mm. Do you think that's out of jealousy or it's just
Oh, absolutely.
mm,
I mean, jealousy is a good emotion to have. People think it's like this terrible emotion to have. It's not. It's a good emotion. It shows you care and you're invested.
yeah,
It's what you do with the emotion. What do you do with all of that jealousy? Do you let
yeah,
it eat you up inside? Does
yeah,
it make you lash out?
yeah,
Or do you look at it and say, you know what? I'm a little jealous. Got a little tingle in my belly here, but like
yeah,
I'm gonna let it go
yeah,
because I know my partner is invested in me.
yeah. That I've actually that's happened in our relationship sometimes where we've had situations in the past where someone
Mhm.
came in our circle and I got slightly jealous of the guy. I'm like, why is he so into my husband? And then, I would ask my husband about it, and then I would just say, I am getting a little bit jealous of your interaction with him. And then we just talk about it and we move on. And ever since then, I kind of just trust that I'm married. I mean, anything can happen. I was having like a meltdown the other day. I was like, I feel like one day, what if we get a divorce? I'm just gonna be a mess. And he's like, why are you thinking we're getting a divorce? So it's just like that communication helped us. But
Mhm.
yeah, I can see the how jealousy it does help because it does show that the person does like you, and if they don't have even a little bit of it, mm, that's not good. But you were
Right.
mentioning before we started this show something about cortisol. Like I've heard about that, and I know in the stuff that I've read, they say cortisol is what causes men to get like belly fat or shit like that. But you were saying how it affects like dating.
Well, it's more of the oxytocin that affects dating
Okay.
because oxytocin is our bonding hormone.
Okay.
It's what allows us to bond with other people.
Like
So
what exactly does it do?
that's the more important hormone really for a relationship. So your oxytocin, for one, is also rejuvenated by self-care, which is why you see all these people talking about how important self-care is, because that's what helps rejuvenate that oxytocin.
Mm,
Oxytocin can be like when you go and work out and you have a really good workout and you're feeling a little bit of high,
mhm,
that's what that is. It also
mm,
raises your cortisol levels as well. But like you need that bonding hormone. You need to be able to bond with another person to have connection. We talk
mm,
about like wanting to have chemistry with someone, but that's just attraction.
mhm,
But really, what we really need to have a successful relationship is connection. We need to bond with them.
mm,
Oxytocin is what that's how mothers bond with their babies. And
mm,
so there's the idea of you also need it to bond with your partner as well.
I didn't know that. So I was totally wrong about the cortisol thing, I guess. Yeah. Huh. Well, I mean that it's like, is that similar to pheromones? Because I know pheromones is something they say you emit when you're attracted to someone.
Right, that's the chemistry.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So this
Um
is mm,
yeah, I mean, okay, so I'll I'll give you a little example, especially for the oxytocin. Um, and some listeners might completely disagree. And fair warned, we're going to talk about sex for a second, or at least masturbation, not necessarily sex.
Mm,
When w- you're getting heterosexual relationship, male, female,
mhm,
when a male masturbates before a date, he lowers his levels and he can't bond as well. When a female masturbates before a date, she raises her oxytocin levels, which allows for more bonding. And that's the pheromone that comes off of them. So when you go on a date with a woman and you're like, God, there's just such this chemistry, it's very possible that's what you're picking up on is that oxytocin that she's putting out there.
hmm.
But if you really want to put that oxytocin out as a woman, masturbate before your date. Men don't masturbate before a date.
Wow. Yeah, don't listen to what they said in the movie, Something About Mary. I mean, you have to be a certain age to see that. Because there's a scene where he's like, yeah, you gotta spank one out before you go on a date so you don't get confused. But I think the whole point of that was to reduce exactly what you're saying when he's on a date. Because I can see that because if you don't masturbate before going on a date with someone, you already have that energy built up. So I
Right.
guess, is it almost like that the testosterone is building up and then he's ready to, I don't know, do whatever. And in my mind, I'm thinking if the female masturbates before she goes on a date, does that make her more relaxed and more open? So is that kind
Absolutely.
of like what's happening?
It's a little opposite. Yeah. So now
Ah,
she's like feeling good. She's feeling good about her body, probably because women who masturbate are comfortable with their body.
yeah.
And she's happy, right? It's going to make her feel very happy and satisfied. And that's going to come off in the date.
Ah, so that's a little secret. If you're just like you said, I like that. I mean, it doesn't, I don't know how that can help gay men because maybe, I mean, I don't know.
Well, if you're talking about gay men, for women, obviously, for lesbians, that works for them. But for
Mhm,
gay men, it's just a matter of knowing not to masturbate before your date
mm,
because
mm,
you want to give off a healthy, happy energy. And a lot of times, masturbating actually depletes your energy.
mm,
Unless you are hyperactive
mhm,
and you need something to calm down,
mhm.
then that's different. So obviously, when we talk about these things, we're not talking about everyone. I'm not blanketing this to everyone.
Hmm,
It's just a majority of people.
hmm. So it's interesting you say this because we just gave basically a trick for heterosexual dating and even other dating, like for gays and lesbians, so anyone who's dating. And I'm
Mhm.
noticing that there's still that energy pool that's there. So it almost still the underlying thing there is the gender roles in a way where it's still a more aggressive versus a more passive energy. So,
Absolutely.
so at the end of the day, while we can see that it is a little damaging that, men have certain standards to live up to, women have certain standards that they have to apply by. Is it good to have gender roles in some of it? Because I have it written down here that there's some singers that like to, talk about, their femininity in their music and how they love to be the kind of woman where I love it when a man comes and just pulls me and tells me what to do. And there's also the opposite of that, where there's female singers who are like, no, I run this show. He does what I say. So there's like that. So do you think these gender roles are helpful or hurtful?
If you
I guess.
have balance, you have to have balance. And what they're talking about is the feminine versus the masculine energy,
Mhm.
because we all have both. Men and women all have both.
Yeah.
And it's how much you are tapping into one versus the other.
Mm,
Um, I've been told personally that I have a lot more masculine energy, and it doesn't mean that I look masculine or that I act like a dude. It just means that sometimes I am too, for a lack of better reference, alpha.
mhm,
I'm too like ambitious and driven, and sometimes I need to just relax and kind of take that back seat and tap into the emotion versus the logical side of things. And that's okay to be more feminine, and it's good to have a balance. Everyone needs to have a balance.
mhm.
But that's what you're hearing is them tapping into that masculine energy versus that feminine energy.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of the opposite. My sister used to joke growing up that I was like the girl out of us two. I mean, there's three of us. I have an older brother, but he has a different father. But growing up in our household, it was just me and my sister, and she was way like she would be beating me up. I'm scared of my sister. I'm not even gonna
Oh
lie.
my
If
god.
we got into a fight, I know she's gonna win. But even in my relationship now, the things that I love most about my husband are the things that remind me of how masculine he is, and
Mm,
there's a lot of those things. And I do feel like sometimes there's this energy between us where I do have a more nurturing energy, I guess a more feminine energy, like
mhm.
I basically take care of this whole damn household. Um, like I enjoyed when I used to like take him to where I enjoyed waking up and ironing his clothes, or I enjoy like cooking him dinner and stuff. And it's so
Mm,
funny because he does have a more of an alpha, like, he's more assertive, he's more extroverted, like, he can talk to anyone, and
mhm.
I feel like for me, I'm more emotional, I'm more like, uh out of the 2 of us, I'm more fashionable. I don't know if that means, more feminine or masculine, but I'm definitely the more, like, over the top, I would say, more eccentric out of us 2, but he's
Right.
definitely has that more masculine, driven, assertive energy, and I think that's how we work sometimes because 'cause we're, like,
Yeah.
opposites, and I kinda sometimes feel like gender roles can be helpful, but I like what you said at the beginning of this episode, where you said people need to be able to switch between the 2. How are people able to do that?
You need to be able to understand the situation that you're in. Um, so I'll give you an example. Some of my closest friends, he is an alpha, she is an alpha.
Mhm,
And when she got pregnant and they had their first child, he knew there were certain things to do with the child that she was going to be making decisions on. Because, for one, it was her body.
mhm,
And he knew that, okay, this is a conversation that I need to back down on and let you take the lead on. But I'm going to talk to you now about things with the house. And I'm going to take the lead on this because this is my area of expertise versus
mhm,
yours.
mhm,
So, knowing your place um, knowing how to communicate and to kind of see your partner's body language changing and shifting, and knowing, look, this is something that I know a lot about, and I'm going to take the lead on this. Or, you're breastfeeding our child. I'm going to assume you know a little bit more than I do.
Mm.
So it's understanding when it is a time to say, look, I don't know as much about this as you do, so I'm going to go ahead and take the back seat here and let you go ahead and lead it.
So is alpha energy versus beta energy just basically a wealth of knowledge in something? Because I've read in like self-help books, the only way you can be a leader in any industry or a leader in any topic is to be very well knowledged about something. So if you're a guy and you know almost or a woman and you know everything about finance, you know, like how numbers work, yada, 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 yada. Inevitably, you'll probably become like a leader in that industry, which then gives you this kind of alpha energy.
Maybe
So,
not, though. Not
hmm,
if you're not willing to speak up.
which is more of a beta energy.
So, right. The beta energy is the person who doesn't speak up and just sits back, and they have this brain full of all of this knowledge, and they kind of just go, well, they're wrong, but I'm not going to say anything because I'm too shy or too embarrassed to say anything.
Hmm,
Or I don't know how to. I don't know how to communicate what I want to say. So I'm just going to kind of take the back seat and just chill.
hmm,
Right. A good leader will also recognize that in their beta workers. They're, you know, they'll be able to see that their employees, for example, understand more than they do. They know more.
hmm,
And so they're going to work really hard on making sure that they take care of those employees and that they're giving them whatever they need. Oh, they need extra time off. That's okay. You can take it because I can't run this business without you, or whatever it is. Right. It's
hmm,
knowing that that's a good leader. That's a good alpha. Now, of course, there's going to be alphas out there that aren't so great at it.
that's for sure.
But a lot of times those are tainted by narcissism or sociopathic behaviors or
Mhm,
psychopathic behaviors, which is a whole
mhm.
other episode for us to talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
But just in general, that alpha beta is and everyone can have a little bit of each, but
Mhm.
overall it's going to be really obvious when you look at people, your friends, your family, your relationships, whether or not they're going to be more of an alpha personality or more of a beta personality.
Yeah, I do notice that in almost everyone. I can like think of everyone I know and I can easily say, oh yeah, they're more alpha. Yeah, they're more beta. They're more
Hmm.
alpha. They're more beta. And I like that you just said that it's good to just know your energy and know how you fit into the situation. There you could probably have the most success. Like I think a lot of times we are in denial of our energy and we think we're
Absolutely.
something that we're not. And then we get in the situation and we're like, oh, like it's funny sometimes when I see some girls and guys where they're like, yeah, I want a man that's gonna be a leader and takes control. And the way they're saying it, I'm like, it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you want to be the leader and take control. And then they get with a guy like that, and he's a leader and he takes control. And they fight all the time because this
Right.
one is like, no, I want to do this. And he's like, but I said I want to do this. But so it's like knowing your energy and accepting it.
Yes,
Hmm,
absolutely. But
yeah,
again, it's being attracted to who we are or what we want
yeah,
to be, right? It's
yeah,
that whole idea of like knowing, like, I'm attracted to someone because they're like me, they're
yeah.
relatable.
Mhm. So the energies at the end of the day doesn't it doesn't fully matter. What really matters is are you relatable with the person? Do your energies work together regardless of which they are?
Right. Have you ever been on a date where you're like, God, this person is perfect for me. I'm perfect for them. We get along really well, but they just, we're not feeling it. Like, why
Yeah,
aren't we feeling it?
yeah.
Because there's no connection, there's no chemistry, whatever it is
Mm,
that you're looking for, it's just not there. And sometimes we try and force it,
mhm.
and it's just like, and it's just,
Yeah,
or the opposite happens. You have like this massive amount of chemistry with someone, and you know this is going to be very volatile. This is
yeah.
going to blow up in my face. And lo and behold, often, more often than
Mhm.
not, it does.
Yeah. Yeah, I've learned that in from past relationships. That's why, like, I have a nice level of sexual attraction to my husband, but I've had relationships in the past where that's all it was. There was no
Hmm.
like stimulation outside of that, and it was just a mess. I mean, the communication was a mess. The only time we could communicate is when we're having sex. That's the only thing we ever like
Oof.
agreed on. And that was just purely chemistry. That was purely, I'm looking at you, I think you're so hot. You're looking at me, you think I'm so hot. We connect there, but then once we stop and talk, our energies don't align. Like either we're both alphas or we're both betas with each other. Do you think the energies can shift based on the person?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, alpha and beta, no, that's kind of ingrained in us. But if we're talking about feminine and masculine energies, then yes,
Mhm,
people work really hard sometimes to tap into some of the opposites. If I am a very feminine person and I'm very nurturing, but I'm trying to say start my own business and I need to tap in to that masculine energy, the logical side of things that,
mhm,
drive that the masculine energy has, then yeah, you can absolutely, work on trying to focus in and bring that more of that masculine energy into your life. But something that you said when you were talking about like sex, it made me think of like gender roles and sex and how in from what I've seen, that has changed over the years.
oh, yeah.
No one's really talking about it, but like it's changed. It used to always be assumed that men had this massive sex drive all the time
Mhm,
and that women didn't. But it's
mhm,
not true.
mhm,
Women, when they hit their 30s and 40s, their sex drive increases
mhm,
while the males tends to decrease a little bit.
mhm.
And like I hear from so many women about how their man, their partner isn't giving it to them as often as they want it.
Mhm.
And so I
Yeah,
think that's a big part of gender roles too is that assumption that women don't like sex as much.
yeah. And also certain types of activities sexually. Like there's certain things that are equated with, I guess, gay or femininity or something like
Hmm.
that. And I know a few straight girls, and I also know their boyfriends throughout my life. And the guy in public will be like, "Yeah, I'm a dude's dude. I don't like any of that weird shit where girls playing with my ass and stuff or doing this or that." And then I talk to their girlfriend in an intimate moment, and she would be like, "Oh my god, he loves it when I eat his ass." I'm like, "What?" It's like, and it's just, and it's like, and it's like multiple guys I've heard that are straight that are now pivoting a little to the other side, where they're doing things that in the past were considered gay
Hmm.
or a little bit more feminine or whatever it's considered. And I just think that that's interesting because it's like I feel like sex shouldn't have gender roles. If you like something, you like it.
No,
If you don't, you don't, and it should just really go with the person. I've
sex
even
is sex.
exactly. And the fact that people get like I don't know if you've heard this, you hear like jokes about like anal sex in the past with straight couples where I don't know how women totally felt about it, but guys would be like, "Oh, I'm not doing it. I'm not gay." I'm like, what does that have to do with being gay or anything? It's like you're still having sex with your wife, you know?
Right.
Or like guys that are into their wives having strap-ons or stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that's taboo amongst, the common knowledge of what's acceptable in relationships.
Hmm.
And it's just sad in a way because in the gay world, I do see like there's certain guys that are so married to the masculine energy that they are deathly afraid of being labeled feminine or a bottom, which
Right.
creates like this tension sometimes, this resentment towards femininity. It's just, it's interesting. Like, I can see where gender roles are helpful if you know how they can work within yourself. But I can see how they're also damaging because it keeps people from really truly embracing what makes them happy because they're so into, oh, this looks either feminine or masculine
Hmm.
without taking all of that away and just saying, what makes you happy? Like,
Right. Absolutely. This is the problem with gender roles. And, it's It's okay if you have them in your relationship. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have, but we need to really start rethinking how we look at gender roles
Yeah.
and taking the word rules out of it,
Yeah.
right? There's no rule about how you have to be because you identify as a male or you identify as a female, or maybe you
Exactly.
identify as neither.
Yeah.
We really need to start looking at how we treat others, how we assume things, the
Mhm.
stereotypes around genders when it comes to
Mhm.
relationships. I think it's starting to change, but I do think that it's going to be a while before we see massive changes to it.
Yeah. I mean, jokes are still being made online where it's like men should always pay the bill, and there's that whole narrative. A friend said the other day that they think the reason why men should pay, I don't know if it was you, please forgive me if it's you that said it, but I just remember someone saying this. The reason why men should pay on dates is because women spend so much money on their hair, makeup, nails, and outfits that it almost makes sense.
And they still make a higher wage.
That too.
It's just a fact of it. Like,
Yeah.
men still make more money than women do. And yes, it was me.
Okay. Yes.
And
Because
maybe it's
sometimes
a
I
little
got,
biased
yeah, yeah,
because I am the female who does these things, you know. I go on a first date and I make sure I look nice for the guy. A guy throws on a shirt, nice pair of pants, some shoes. Maybe he has a fancy watch, but that's it. That's all he does.
yeah,
He doesn't have to put on makeup. He doesn't have to like have hair products. He doesn't have to spend $300 on creams to make sure his skin looks glowy.
yeah,
It's just it's very unbalanced still.
it
There's
is.
an imbalance with how men and women date.
Yeah. It's like, if you think about it, you could say to the guy, why don't you take that 30% more that you're making than me and take us on a date? It'll kind of even
Can you imagine
itself out,
saying that?
even itself out a little bit. Oh my gosh. I I hope that this episode, I mean, I've learned a lot today.
Good.
I've realized I had a lot of like wild assumptions about gender roles and obviously cortisol.
Mhm. Maybe we'll bring that back on for another episode.
Yeah. No, it's just I remember seeing, I think a diet pill thing a few years ago. They're
Oh.
like, "Oh, are your cortisol levels too high? Take this pill and reduce your cortisol levels to reduce your belly fat, but this only applies to men." So I was just thinking of something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair.
yeah,
I love that we're kind of coming back and just doing these episodes with just us, and hopefully all of the listeners are enjoying that as well. So I think we're going to do that more often.
yeah.
Next week, we're going to have a guest, but we are going to try and make sure that we have a few episodes where it's just us and
You, just us and you listening.
yes.
Yeah.
So
This is a good I was
again,
excited to do this episode, so I think, yeah. I
yeah, me
really
too.
yeah,
Me too, for sure.
yeah.
Just a reminder to our listeners that if you have any questions you want answered, or if you have a situation you would like answered, I've gotten a few that have reached out but don't want it answered on the show, and that's okay too. So
Mhm,
if you want to just kind of say, like, look, don't answer this on your show, but can you answer this question? That's all right too.
mhm.
But you can email us at datesmartersexier@gmail.com, or find our Instagram page, which is the same, or hop on the Facebook group, which is Date Smarter Sexier. You can ask questions in there. The group is really good about being respectful. So let us know what your thoughts are. If you have questions, we'll answer them. But
For
until next
sure.
week,
Thanks for
have a great
listening.
weekend, everyone.